Have you ever taken a sip of your coffee and thought to yourself, this tastes very different, or wow, this is really strong today? I know we Rhode Islanders love our Dunkin' coffee, but if you can next time stop and grab a coffee from your local coffee shop or even a different brand from the store, you will be shocked by the difference in taste. The quality and taste of a coffee is highly dependent on the process it undergoes after it has been harvested. My father owned and operated his own coffee farm in Colombia for 20 plus years. And every time we travel outside the country, we get to know the origin of the coffee in the area. And I myself have become very familiar with the topic of coffee and the quality of a good cup of coffee. So, what exactly is coffee? The single thing that gets half of Americans out of bed or even keeps most of us awake during the day. To some, it is a delicacy that is shared during a special time. And for many years, coffee has been a part of many cultures around the world. According to Foster, coffee is a beverage that is brewed with either very hot or boiling water and coffee beans, which have already been roasted and grounded. Before we begin talking about what exactly coffee processes are, I wanted to discuss and give you a visual representation of what a coffee bean cherry looks like. Below, we have a realistic visual representation of what a coffee bean cherry looks like right after it's been picked from a coffee plant. The outside layer, which is its thinnest layer, is known as the skin. It is the reddest part. The gel-like substance in the middle is known as the pulp, and the lung-shaped objects inside the cherry are known as the bean. When the cherries are freshly picked off of the plant, they are indeed green. However, the bean is whole inside, just this picture is sliced in half. After it undergoes a couple of processes, the bean looks exactly what we are used to seeing, which is a roasted bean. Like I mentioned before, coffee undergoes a couple of processes. But first, the coffee bean is extracted from a coffee plant when it is at its ripest stage. The plant's cherries are usually hand-picked and peeled to reveal the coffee bean. Once the coffee beans have been sorted through, the beans undergo a roasting process. There are three roasting processes that a bean undergoes, which will result in a different flavor profile. There is a natural process, washed process, and the honey process. The natural process has been around for many years and it is still used today. With this method, the beans are collected, but the cherry is not peeled. In other words, once they are picked, they are left to dry as is. They are scattered on a flat surface and are left to dry with the natural sunlight. The beans are turned over routinely to avoid fermentation. Once the beans are fully dry, the skin or the dried fruit flesh slips right off, revealing the processed bean. According to Fireback Coffee, since this method is done with the bean drying within the fruit, the flavor of the bean is often sweet and fruity. Another very well-known method is the washed method. Like the natural process, the beans are picked when they are at their ripest. However, the fruit is peeled off of the bean after it soaks in water for about 24 to 72 hours. Once beans have soaked, they go through a depulper machine that removes the cherry or fruit off of the bean. Back in the day, there were no machines, therefore everything was manually removed. And even there are some people who say that manually removed beans have an immense flavor compared to the beans that have been touched by the machine. However, this machine uses water power to remove the cherry off of the bean, hence the name of the process. In other words, the cherry or the fruit is literally washed off the bean due to the machine. The beans are then laid out to dry in the sun like the natural process. However, unlike the natural process, the beans are at full exposure to the sun, meaning like there is no cherry covering and protecting the bean. Therefore, the beans are routinely turned over in order to avoid mold or rotting. Once the beans are fully dry, they are ready to be grinded and enjoyed. According to Carlos Oliveros, washed coffees are clean. They allow you to taste all the delicious flavors of the origin and the variety, from the acidity to the hint of sweetness or even a floral aroma. Finally, we have the honey process, which is a perfect combination of both the natural process and the washed process. The honey process is a process within the name honey, and it is due to how sticky the bean becomes during the process. Like the previous processes, the first step is harvesting the cherry. The key difference in this process is that some of the fruit is left on the bean during the drying process. The cherries are passed through a depulping machine. However, depending on the desired flavor, one could take less or more fruit off of the bean. In some countries, some people can actually go down to a farmer and tell them exactly how they want their bean process to look like. And that way they have their exact flavor as to how they want their coffee to taste. To some people, that's a very big luxury. Once the beans have been depulped, they are left to dry like the previous processes out in the sun. As soon as the beans are dry, the remaining fruit on it is removed and they are ready to be grinded. These three processes have been around for centuries, some of which have been perfected, some of which have perfected the art of coffee in its own unique way. Depending on the processes of your coffee undergoes determines the flavor or acidity you will experience. Every cup of coffee has its own personality. Every culture has its own method they use to cultivate and harvest their coffee. So next time you take a sip of your coffee, ask your barista or even take a look at the packaging to find out the origin and process of your coffee that your coffee has gone through. Thank you and have a great rest of the day.